Ave Maria Stella.
Hello and welcome back to Vatican II in a Year. This is your host, Father Matthew Schneider. I am a priest of the Legions of Christ and a theology professor. This is a podcast on the StarQuest Production Network at sqpn.com. Today we are on day 150. Woohoo! Big milestone, I guess. And we're covering Perfecte Caritatis 12 on the vow of chastity, right? So we religious are called to the vow of chastity. Poverty, chastity, and obedience are the three main vows we usually talk about, which are going to be today, tomorrow, and the next day. What a surprise. But we're going to start with chastity. So yesterday we talked about the beauty of several specific forms of consecrated life, such as monks, non-clerical religious, and secular institutes. Today we're going to talk about the vow of chastity reminds all Christians of heaven and frees us religious to work, but also has practical aspects and needs to be maintained. So we just have paragraph 12 today. It has three subparagraphs, which, like usual, we call A, B, and C. Pretty normal thing here on this podcast. So A talks about chastity symbolizes heaven and frees us to live more for God. It's the more spiritual one, the more kind of goal and aim of chastity. B talks about how we use natural and supernatural means to foster chastity, how we bring it about. And C is making sure people are ready to make the vow before they profess this vow, right? So that's important, right? How do we prepare people for the vow of chastity? So going into the text paragraph 12a, let's read it. The chastity, for the sake of the kingdom of heaven, Matthew 19, which religious profess should be counted an outstanding gift of grace. It frees the heart of man in a unique fashion, confer 1 Corinthians 7, so that it may be more inflamed with love for God and all men. Thus, it not only symbolizes in a singular way the heavenly goods, but also the most suitable means by which religious dedicate themselves with undivided heart to the service of God and the works of the apostolate. In this way, they recall to their minds of all the faithful that wondrous marriage decreed by God and which is fully revealed in the future age in which the church takes Christ as its only spouse. So here they start in the beginning. Chastity is not an end in itself. Chastity is for the sake of the kingdom, right? So I don't profess the vow of chastity just because I want to have, no. Most people who profess have a desire to be married, right? So when I felt the call to be a priest, to be a religious, I was definitely wanting to be married. I had already thought through it, and I dated a girl in high school, and then I'd held off the first years of college. First of all, because I was thinking I don't want to date a girl for too long, and I'm not ready to marry until after I'm done my college degree. And then later in the college, because I was starting to think about a vocation. Anyways, but that idea is, it is for the sake of the kingdom, not just for because I want to, right? And it's essential for the religious state, right? What religious really profess is continence or celibacy, not just chastity, right? So that's going to be a little bit complicated to explain, but we'll get into that today. And it frees the heart for God, right? We need it to be religious, right? It's a suitable means to be undivided for God, right? So that frees my heart, right? I have a heart, my heart's going to be attached. And now, because I'm a religious, because I made a vow of chastity, my heart is freer to be totally dedicated to God. And chastity really symbolizes heaven, right? We talked about that. We talked about theology of body. I actually explained it because Father Joseph was like, well, you're the moral theology prof. Anyways, and that's right, because who is my spouse? The spouse is God himself, right? That's the spouse of the religious. And it helps laity think about heaven, right? Because in heaven, we're going to have that perfect relationship with God, and we're not going to be married or given in marriage, right? As Jesus says, right? So that's what we're preparing for. And obviously it's not perfect. Like, religious life is not heaven every single day. Anyone who's religious will tell you there's little conflicts and issues like there is in any other kind of life. We are not all angels. So let's move on to 12b, talking about using natural and supernatural means to foster charity. Religious, therefore, who are striving faithfully to observe the chastity they professed, must have faith in the words of the Lord, and trusting in God's help, not overestimate their own strength, but practice mortification and custody of the senses. Neither should they neglect the natural means which promote health of mind and body. As a result, they will not be influenced by those false doctrines which scorn perfect continence as being impossible or harmful to human development, and they will repudiate by a criteria spiritual instinct everything which endangers chastity. In addition, let all, especially superiors, remember that chastity is guarded more securely when true brotherly love flourishes in the common life of the community. Right, so we introduced a kind of new word here that talked about perfect continence. Continence refers to refraining from all sexual acts. It's very close to celibacy. If you understand celibacy in a Catholic context, because celibacy means not being married, right? It implies continence. Chastity is the right order of the sexual faculties, so it does not imply the same way that, continence and celibacy do, because, Catholics can live chastity and be married. That's pretty well known, right? I think I've mentioned that before. But anyways, just that term, perfect continence, is perfectly living the vow of chastity out. So this chastity is not automatic. It becomes easier with practice, right? I think, that's, as you've lived it, just like I'm sure for married people, when you have the first struggles in your dating or marriage, it's like, maybe I'm going to go with some other woman. But then, as you get older, it hopefully becomes easier. And I think in the same ways. And then we need to use both natural and supernatural means to work towards it, right? Supernatural means, right? Faith in the words of the Lord. Prayer, fraternal charity, it mentions at the end, right? Natural means. Realism and our own strength. Don't, yes, I'm not going to, it wouldn't be directly sinful for me to, look at certain things, but it's not proper, right? It's like, and it's not going to be healthy to help chastity doing that, right? And then custody of the senses. And then have a healthy body, psychology, physical body, right? So, for example, today, the day I'm recording this, I went for a 26-mile bike ride on a trail nearby, right? So that's that keeps my body a healthy body, right? And there's an error saying that, it's evil or psychologically bad if trying to live perfect chastity. But look at how many holy religious, how many holy nuns who are also psychologically sound there are, right? That's not that every single person, because they're a religious, is going to be psychologically sound, going to have no things. I mean, if you want to talk about this, I have been open about being diagnosed with autism. Others have been open about depression, things like that. And obviously that can exist in anyone, but it isn't just that like being chaste and not getting married, not having sex is somehow going to mess you up psychologically. It simply won't. That's simply not true. So moving on to 12C, which is summarized to make sure people are ready before professing this vow, right? So we don't want to just, take people off the street, take people who are living a life very contrary to this and just like, oh, tomorrow you're going to be chastity. No. And so there's certain things we have to do when we have to think about how we prepare people for this and how we check to make sure they're ready for this. So let's read the text. Since the observers of perfect continence touches intimately on the deepest instincts of human nature, candidates should neither present themselves nor be admitted to the vow of chastity unless they have been previously tested sufficiently and have been shown to possess the required psychological and emotional maturity. They should not only be warned of the dangers to chastity, which they may meet, but they should be so instructed as to be able to undertake the celibacy which binds them to God in a way which will benefit their entire personality, right? So here it's saying, it's not only that it's not psychologically, it will benefit their entire personality, right? That's what it concludes with. Sorry, that was the conclusion there. I hadn't written that down, but that's an important thing. It benefits us. So it's not just not damaging, it's actually beneficial. We need to make sure people are ready for this, right? So religious life, in the seminary too, you have psychological testing of the deity. It's making sure that people have the emotional, psychological maturity, making sure they don't have things, certain kind of mental disorders where it could be very problematic if they're, for being a priest and things like that. Obviously, don't test for everything. I was tested once my first summer when I was there, and then once about a decade in, a little bit before ordination, and nothing was even brought up about autism at the time, right? They weren't testing for that. So, because it's not really relevant to what they were testing for. They're testing to make sure I'm psychologically mature, emotionally mature, and those are not incompatible with being autistic. Anyways, and they need to be living it for a time, right? Religious life has certain stages. So you have a kind of preparatory stage, which can be various lengths of different communities. You have a novitiate from 1 to 2 years, and then you have temporary vows from 3 to 6 years, theoretically up to 9 in certain exceptional cases. And then after that, you make final vows. So it takes you at least four, usually up to 8 years, depending on the community and how they set it up, before you make the final vows in that sense of chastity, right? So that's preparing you. And then be realistic. There are dangers. There are difficulties. We have to prepare people to undertake it, prepare them in how we form them, right? And that's important, right? Finally, just to conclude this paragraph, I think it's good to think of chastity as a gift, but think of it as a gift that needs care to appreciate, right? if my nephew, well, actually my nephew did just get a puppy. My nephew and niece just got a puppy, right? And like it's a nice gift, right? But like if they just like leave the puppy and ignore it, it's going to be a mess. It's not going to be fun. It's not going to be enjoyable. But if they train the puppy, so it knows certain commands and care for the puppy, it's going to be a much better gift. And I think chastity in many ways like that, where you have to take care of it, live it out well, and things like that. Obviously not perfectly analogous to a puppy, but hopefully that you understand that analogy. Anyway, so let's conclude today. Thank you for listening to this episode of Vatican II in a Year. This is a listener-supported podcast. You can help StarQuest produce another great podcast at sqpn.com/give. You can give one-time monthly or join the StarQuest Patreon. Tomorrow, I'm going to continue with the next paragraphs of Perfecte Caritatis, which is 13 on the vow of poverty. And the day after that will be the vow of obedience. Please join us then to learn more about Vatican II, which will provide a blueprint for the Catholic Church. If you want more information, like playlists for individual documents and a reading plan, go to sqpn.com/Vatican, frmatthewlc.com/Vatican, or Vatican SQPN on Facebook and X. There's also an SQPN Discord with a channel for Vatican II in a Year at sqpn.com/Discord.
Amen.